Hi everyone, Wismeril here, bringing you a summary of patch 1.1.1 that was just discussed during the Campfire with the developers of Diablo 4. So we'll be focusing solely on the Sorcerer changes in that video. Let's begin. So let's start with the fire skills, and starting with Fireball, because many changes have been done in that direction. So they are trying to make Fireball more viable, well, it's not really the case actually, and the changes they are doing are really good in going further in that direction. Alright, so first they are changing in the skill tree of Fireball, the second node you can get in the tree, that it will have 50% more radius when you cast it, instead of having the radius get bigger as the Fireball travels further and further. So that's a good change. Second, they are changing still in the skill tree that Fireball will now deal 20 to 30% more critical strike damage. 20% on single target, 30% if Fireball hits several enemies. So that's also a very good change, because critical strike damage is one of the external multipliers that make your skills scale into the late game. So pushing the damage in that direction is great. Now, Essus Ferocity, which is a passive of the Sorcerer class in the skill tree. A very good one. It increases your critical strike chance and critical strike damage for fire skills. But the problem with that node was that it didn't apply very much on single targets like bosses. Now they are making it that if you crit a boss, it will proc, which is great, especially along the attack speed legendary. That makes your attack speed being increased by 50% when both bonuses of Essus Ferocity are active. So this will really improve one of the problems that this passive had, in my opinion, and now for boss fights it's gonna be awesome. Pair it with the legendary for 50% more attack speed. It is huge, as long as the mana can, as long as you can sustain the mana, but they made changes in that direction. We'll see it shortly. Then they changed the aspect of the 3 curses. It used to be a legendary only for Meteor, and now they are making it apply to Fireball also. What it does is you will get 40% more critical strike damage on Fireball and Meteor, but we're talking about Fireball here, and it's doubled against healthy creatures, so creatures that have more than 80% maximum, 80% life. So that's great. Like, you will be doing 80% critical strike damage, additional critical strike damage against healthy creature, and then when they drop below 80% life, you're going to do 40% critical strike damage. Once again, this is a great area to improve the damage of Fireball, to push it into the late game. Critical strike damage is an external multiplier. They are changing the Unix gloves, which normally, like those gloves, you know, when Fireball will pierce enemy, it changes from a kind of clunky skill that will only hit the first target and explode into an AoE skill that will bounce on the ground and hit multiple groups of enemies. So those gloves on paper were great, but when playing those, I had a very hard time because they are so clunky. The bounces are very far apart from each other, making it super clunky to play it, especially when you're trying to hit targets that are very close to you. So they made a change. They put numbers like from 3 to 2.5, so it's hard to tell on paper with the numbers they put, but it should bounce less far from you, so you should be able to hit targets in front of you a lot easier. And since the bounces are smaller, the distance between the bounces is smaller, then you should be able to hit multiple groups of enemies. It should bounce a little bit more when cast to the maximum range. So for this, we'll have to test the item and make sure that it's playable now. Let's hope, because this is really needed in the Fireball build to consistently hit enemies in an AoE fashion. So let's see how it goes. They also changed the affixes of the gloves. Right now, in the future, it will have a chance to restore mana, which is great. And they also changed the damage reduction you were getting, the fireball damage reduction when you cast it, because now it bounces, so it deals more damage because of the bounce. So to balance it, it has to deal less damage on each bounce. It was not 100% clear to me what they did exactly during when they explained it during the dev chat, because they said they would remove any damage reduction, but on screen we were seeing that they just changed the numbers from 65 to a little bit less. So I'm not sure if they change it from it deals less damage when it bounces to it deals more damage when it bounces. It was unclear to me. I'm waiting to see the full patch notes on August 2. Next, they made a very interesting change to the way you would regen your mana with the fire spec. The incendiary aspect before used to trigger only of burning damage, and now it triggers of pyromancy damage, which is great. So now it can be included in the fireball spec. So now on pyromancy lucky hit, it has a 17% chance to generate 10 mana. So on multi-target, this should keep your mana bar full at all times, which is great. I only have one concern. Will this be enough versus single target? I'm not so sure. I will be testing and will report on the channel. Next, we have the burn damage. So this is something that they also changed. The combustion class passive is now a 20% flat damage. Before it used to be 2 to 4% per source of burn that you apply to the target, which was unplayable really. Now they changed it to 20% flat plus 2% per source of burn. So it will be a little bit more playable. We still have to see, because burn damage was kind of weak in the late game. So let's see if this change plus others will make the burn damage playable now. A great change that they did is the Engulfing Flames Legendary. That's the one that increases your burn damage when you've applied more burn than the remaining health of the monster. And it used to be 40%. They changed it to 80% more damage, which is great, because one of the problems of the burn damage specs on the Sorcerer is that once you applied all the dots and you're waiting for the target to die of the dots, it can take quite some time, and you're just running around in circles waiting for it to happen, which is not great as a playstyle. And now they changed it with this 80% damage, and I think it might do the trick. Like, once you apply enough burn on the enemy and it will die to all the burn you've applied, it should go a lot faster to finish off the enemy. So I can't wait to test this one with Firewall and a few different other burn skills. Let's see how it goes. Speaking of burn damage skills, we have Incinerate, which is, that clunky spell where you have to stay in place to channel. Incinerate, well, they boosted the damage 10% more. It used to be 30% on the Conflagration Legendary, and now it's 40%. So I'm not sure it's gonna cut it, because Incinerate is very clunky. And last time I checked, the damage is simply not there. So a bump in 10% along the other changes, we'll see if it makes it playable, but I doubt it. I'd rather test those changes on the Firewall spec rather than on the Incinerate. We'll see how it goes. I included the Serpentine aspect on the burn damage because you can play Hydra as a burn spell. So I think it might fit more the Hydra playstyle in a burn spec than in on-hit damage. We'll see. I will test both specs and report on the channel. So the Hydra duration given by the serpentine aspects, before it used to reduce the duration. Now it increases the duration by 24%. It's a quality of life change because it doesn't increase the damage that Hydras do. We'll see how it goes. I will test it and report. Last change with the fire spec is Firebolt. It used to give 2 mana back when you were hitting a burning target, and now it's 2 mana when you hit a target. And remember those Firebolt pierce? So that's a good change, especially along the incendiary. Maybe you will have to have a basic skill like Firebolt along the incendiary aspect, because incendiary will keep your mana bar full versus multi-target, and when you're against a single target, maybe you have to have Firebolt when your mana bar is empty to try to, you know, boost up a little bit the mana regen so you can fire your Firebolts. We'll see how it goes. Now, one thing they did not address during that Campfire chat is the problem with the vulnerable application of burn, of fire rather, and lightning, and that's an issue. They said that in the long run, they are going to make vulnerable less desirable and other options more desirable, but that's not gonna happen in patch 1.1.1. So we're still going against the same problem. With your lightning, well, lightning is a bit different because the ball lightning is a melee build, so you can easily apply it with Frost Nova. But with the burn damage and with the fire damage in general, this is ranged damage. So Frost Nova is a bit clunky to apply vulnerable when your targets are far from you. You don't want to jump in the middle of the fray if you have a ranged spec, a ranged, skill set. So that sucks. It has not been addressed, and it's still a real problem. So I'll be testing the fire spec, but I'm not too sure on the late game scaling capacity as of patch 1.1.1. Maybe we will need one more patch to solve the problem when they finally address the vulnerability issue. Like maybe they don't make it a separate damage multiplier anymore, or they make other options separate damage multipliers, and then we have options to choose from, and we don't rely solely on Frost Nova to apply vulnerable or ice shards in some of the cold builds. Let's move on to the lightning changes. So they changed chain lightning. They made it in a way that now it will deal more damage per bounce instead of dealing more damage when it bounces off you, which is a good change. It's gonna deal a little bit more damage, but again, I'm not too sure if it's going to scale really well into the late game, chain lightning that is. They changed the recharging aspect in the same fashion that now instead of giving back mana when it bounces off you, it gives back mana when it bounces period. So it's better, but once again, maybe we still lack the damage on chain lightning to scale it all the way to the late game. The unbroken tether was changed. Before it had a chance to bounce to 2 more targets, and now it has a chance to bounce to 4 more targets. So that's great, but still, I'm not sure chain lightning is gonna be playable in the late game. On to ball lightning, and I really like the changes they made to ball lightning. That's the spec. I'll test in fire. First spec I'll test is fireball with lightning. First spec I'm gonna try again is the ball lightning spec. I have hopes for this one. It's a really fun spec to play. So gravitational has been changed. That's the one that makes ball lightning orbit around you. Before, it used to make ball lightning deal less damage, and now it makes it deal 25% more damage. A great change. So can't wait to try it out. They made a change to chain lightning where in the skill tree there is one option to make it form crackling energy on critical strike. The chance has been increased. I think it was 25% and it has been changed to 30%. So I put that change here because usually chain lightning in the ball lightning build, chain lightning is used as an enchantment in order to generate crackling energy when you spend a lot of mana, and this crackling energy can then be used to refill your mana bar thanks to a node in the skill tree. So this is also a buff to the ball lightning build. More crackling energy means more mana and makes the means the ball lightning build will work a lot better. Next change, the VR Mastery class passive. This changes, all the changes to VR Mastery are great. I really like them. So they changed the damage you deal to close target from 10% to 15%. That's great. They also introduce a legendary that was data mined during beta and at game release, but was not in the game when they released the game, which is the Mage Lord aspect, Mage Lord legendary. What it does is it increases the potency of VR Mastery per enemy, per close enemy. If there are 3 close enemies, the VR Mastery potency is increased by 90%, and this is no joke. So VR Mastery damage reduction is 20% like flat. And if you score critical strike hits, the damage reduction from VR Mastery becomes 25%. And then on top of that now, if you have the Mage Lord Legendary equipped, you go up to 47.5% damage reduction if there are 3 close enemies and you score a critical strike. That's great because ball lightning is a melee build, and having the option to equip that legendary will really help on the survivability front. So I'm pretty hyped to try the updated version of the ball lightning. It's a great build, lacking a little bit of damage, but we'll see. Continuing, yes, in the lightning changes, and those ones also apply to ball lightning a lot. So they changed a few glyphs. The territorial one, which is an increase of damage to close targets. That's the one you can play when you're playing the ball lightning spec. They changed the damage reduction from close enemies from 10 to 15%. So that's great alongside the VR Mastery changes, right? You'll be more durable. They changed the warding glyph. So this one, I think I never played it before, but now seeing how much it's been buffed, I might play it in the ball lightning build. This glyph is used to say the less mana you have, the more damage reduction you have, and it would give you, I think, 13% damage reduction when you are close to no mana. Now it gives you a big 25% damage reduction when you're close to no mana. That's a big number. And with the ball lightning build, usually you jump into the fray, pack enemies with your unique chest armor, and then cast as many ball lightnings as you can so that they all orbit around you, and then you move around to damage the enemy. So by casting all those ball lightnings, you empty your mana before you move towards enemy to damage them. So like you pull them, they are stunned for some time, then you empty your mana, and when you start moving, you will have, if you equip the warding glyph, 25% damage reduction, which is great. Next change, the reinforced one. So this one's great. I've been using it a lot. That's the one that boosts the rare nodes, and usually it's one of the glyphs you can put when you want to increase the potency of your vulnerable damage rare nodes from the Frigid Fate Paragon board. So Reinforce is one that I've been using this season because the Sorcerer is quite squishy. It used to give 10% damage reduction when you have a barrier, and now it's 15%. So great change, giving us a little bit more survivability. Next, last change on the lightning front, the ceaseless conduit. It used to give, that's the crackling energy damaging node of the Paragon board, ceaseless conduit. It used to give 2% more damage per 20 intelligence you have, and now it's 3% more damage per 20 intelligence you have. So that's a little bit more damage, but still I think that's not enough. Crackling energy doesn't deal enough damage to be a viable late game build. So to summarize here, for the lightning, I still have the same problem, whereas the vulnerable application. So ball lightning is fine because you'll use Frost Nova, your melee build, but if you want to try chain lightning or other types of builds with lightning, you still have an issue on reliably applying vulnerable. On to defense, which is one of the problems of the Sorcerer in Season 1. It's very squishy because the elemental resistance is broken. So we don't have our inherent way to have access to defense. So they did some changes that I really like, starting with the Snow Veiled. That's the one that makes ice armor. That's a legendary aspect that makes ice armor give you unstoppable, and I've been using that in the PvP ice shards build. It's a great legendary. Now it used to last 3 seconds, now they change it to 5 seconds, so that in itself it's already a great boost, because in PvP fights are long, and like having access to unstoppable for 5 seconds will already be a very good move. On top of that, it increases your armor by 10%, and this is the great thing about that change. Because before we used to rely only on the Disobedience legendary to increase our armor by 30%. Now having access to that is wonderful, because Disobedience plus this one, that's a 40% increase in armor. I really like that change. I'm already using Snow Veiled a lot in many of my builds. I will continue to use it even more, and I will include it in the next theory crafting sessions that I will do on fire and lightning. Next we have the Snow Guard. It used to give 25% damage reduction when standing in your own blizzard, and now it's giving that 2 seconds after leaving blizzard. So nice quality of life change. On to the Paragon, they increases the toughness on a few different rare and magic nodes. So on all the burning damage reduction nodes, they moved it from 4% to 5%. Same for vulnerable, they moved it from 4% to 5%. And on the max life nodes, it used to be 4% if I'm not mistaken, and they changed it to 6% max lives. So those changes are great. In Season 1, the Paragon boards that I'm using are very tanky because of, once again, the problem of toughness on the Sorcerer class. So boosting, you know, those small things here, small things there on other things, you know, overall, I think all those changes will really help on making the Sorcerer less squishy. Those changes are great. I can't wait to test them out and to give you a final feedback. Next, we are moving on to the miscellaneous. We have Frozen Orbit Explosion that has been increased from 30 to 40%. There's a legendary Frozen, it's not Frozen Memory, it's, it's Frozen Orbit, my bad, sorry. So it used to do 30% additional damage per explosion, and it has been moved to 40%. So that's great, especially alongside the hearts that make you launch several frozen orbits, several frozen orbs at once, emptying your mana bar in the process. So I think this will be great. I can't wait to test it out also. On to Stormswell. So Stormswell is the legendary that makes you deal, it used to make you deal 20% more damage to vulnerable enemies while you have a barrier. Now it's 30%, which makes it the second best damaging legendary after the Aspect of Control, which has 35%. The second one used to be the one that gives you 25% while you have a barrier. Now this one is this now new second best one. So nice change there, a little bit more damage. And last but not least, Concentration Legendary. It used to boost your mana regen by 30% if you were not hit during 3 seconds. Now it will boost your mana regen by 50% if you have not been hit in the last 2 seconds. For speed farming, this is huge. Before, I never really put this legendary in my speed farming builds because I found it too weak. 3 seconds not being hit for just 30% mana regeneration. Now with those numbers, I'm considering including the Concentration Legendary on my speed farming builds. So once again, I will make tests on all the speed farming builds I currently have, and I will report on the channel to tell you if you should do it also or not. So that's it for the patch note. In the coming days, I'm going to theory craft a lot of different builds now that those changes are on the table. So stay tuned to the channel, and I'll see you in Sanctuary, Nephalem.